Hi friends! Today let's dive into The Incredibles 2. Obvious spoiler warning if you haven't yet seen The Incredibles 2. You know, when I went to go see The Incredibles 2 on Friday, and again yesterday, I realised something. We already know one of the characters. Winston Deavor is Alistair Krei from Big Hero 6. Wait, what? Well, first off, just look at them. Yes, there are some slight differences between them, but this can be very easily explained. Winston's hair, for example, is dark, whereas Alistair's hair is blonde. However, if you actually look at Alistair properly, his eyebrows and the roots of his hair are brown, which shows that his hair was most likely dyed blonde. Then, there's a difference in build. Alistair has quite a bit of a stockier build than Winston has. But again, this can be explained away by a different diet or different exercise, or maybe stress? We'll get back to that in a bit. The biggest difference between them is their noses. Alistair's nose is wider at the base than Winston's. This can be explained by the different animation techniques that were used. The animation in the Incredibles franchise is a lot more harsh and angular and less prone to detail than the one in Big Hero 6. So it makes sense that Winston's nose has less detail to it than Alistair's. Now, let's look at their companies, Krei and DevTech. First of all, the names are so similar. Then there's also the logos that use similar colours and similar patterns. DevTech was Winston's father's company that Winston and his sister Evelyn inherited when their father passed away. It makes sense that for Winston, when he makes his own company, that he uses a lot of the similar ideas that he grew up surrounded with. Another proof of the similarity between the two companies is the buildings of the headquarters. They both use similar architectural design, again pointing towards the two companies being not that different. Then there's Alistair Krei's assistant, who looks quite a bit like Evelyn. This would be because Alistair/Winston hired someone who looks a bit like his sister because he missed her when he moved from Municipalburg to San Francisco. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait just a minute. Municipalburg and San Francisco? They don't look alike at all. Well, when have two cities on opposing sides of the country ever looked that alike? The main difference between the two cities is that the Incredibles franchise takes place in the 50s, 60s, whereas Big Hero 6 seems to take place in a much more modern time period. However, there are absolutely no dates mentioned in Big Hero 6. When you compare the technology in the two towns, it becomes quite obvious that they're not that far apart. Though San Francisco has nice modern buildings and quite modern cars, the metro system that it uses seems to be quite a bit older than the metro system we see in Municipalburg. The levitating train in New Urban that Elastigirl saves also boasts very high-end technology, much higher end than what we see in San Francisco. It actually uses a similar technology as Go-Go's bike, electromagnetic suspension.
Whoa, electromag suspension?
There is a lot of advanced technology in The Incredibles 2 that means it's not that far behind San Francisco. When you look at the DevTech boat, Winston's personal plane, or even Evelyn's jet that she has on the boat, they all look very sleek and modern, not at all like the rest of Municipalburg. The Elasticycle also has quite a bit of advanced tech, quite similar to what we see in Big Hero 6. Then there's also the glasses that Screenslaver uses, and the little cameras that Evelyn embeds in the Super's suits. These all resemble, or even surpass, most of the tech that we see in Big Hero 6. It seems that some of the technology that we see in Municipalburg isn't actually that far behind what they're studying in the San Francisco Institute of Technology. So, how does everything fit in? Why did Winston leave? Where do the movies fit on this timeline? Let's start from the beginning. The Supers are legal and they're doing their thing, they're saving the world. We know that Winston's dad is very supportive of the Supers. He donates money for their cause, and he even sets up a couple of phone lines in his house that link direct to a couple of the Supers, just in case he needs some help. Then, what we see at the start of the first Incredibles movie happens. The Supers are deemed as too dangerous and too costly, and they're made illegal.
They are living among us, average citizens, average heroes, quietly and anonymously continuing to make the world a better place.
This means that when the Deavor's home gets broken into and the father tries to call the supers for help, no one answers his call. So, sadly, both him and his wife die, leaving Winston and Evelyn a lot of money and a company to run. Winston and Evelyn constantly fight about what their parents should have done. Between the constant fighting and the grief that he feels, Winston realizes he just needs some space. So he decides to fly off to San Francisco, putting himself literally as far away from his sister as he can. His father was a big public figure. Winston needed to break away from his family to protect himself from the pain that he feels. He therefore decides to change his name to Alistair Krei and dye his hair blonde so he's not recognizable. In San Francisco, Alistair Krei uses his inheritance money and the knowledge he has as to how to run a company to build up his own company, Krei Tech. He loses himself in his work and in his workouts, meaning he starts to build a much stronger body. Both him and his company start becoming very successful, even if people don't feel they can trust him.
But you should know, Mr. Krei has cut corners and ignored sound science to get where he is.
That's just not true.
I wouldn't trust Krei Tech with your microbots, or anything else.
Why can't he be trusted? Well, Winston's created a fake identity, which comes with a few problems. He can't explain why he has so much money, or how he got the knowledge to run a successful company. He can't even explain why he can't explain anything, or what his past was. A lot of these aspects means that not many people will trust this very rich and very successful and very cold businessman. Alistair's rise in success means that he hires a personal assistant. He subconsciously hires someone who looks a lot like his sister Evelyn, as up until that point in his life, he'd never done anything without his big sister there. Then, the events of Big Hero 6 happens. Alistair sees these kids using these superpowers and defeating evil. He's immediately reminded of the supers that he had growing up. However, these children aren't supers. They're just kids or young adults with cool gadgets and robots. This gives Alistair an idea. While watching these kids in their flashy, colourful suits beating evil, he decides that he can bring the supers back. Not using people with powers, but using people with technology and robots.
I love that robot!
As technology and robots aren't actually against the law, he isn't going to be breaking the no supers law, but can still bring back the superheroes of his childhood. Alistair therefore decides it's time to go home and talk to his tech genius sister Evelyn. He feels that she will help him bring superheroes back legally. So, Winston flies back to Ministerburg, lets his hair grow back naturally, and goes back to using his actual name. Evelyn agrees to help her brother, but the two still constantly argue. The stress of being back with his sister and having to build yet another company up from scratch means that he no longer has time for his personal workouts, and Winston starts losing the weight and muscles he had put on in San Francisco. As their work progresses, Winston realizes that he doesn't really want to be bringing back fake supers, but he wants to bring real heroes back. So he stops producing gadgets and robots and starts trying to find a way of changing the law. We see the rest of the story in Incredibles 2. Still not convinced that the two movies are linked? Well, do you remember that scene at the very end, very end after the credits of Big Hero 6?
Dad, I just wish I could share my accomplishments with you. You mean so much to me, and honestly, I've always felt a distance, what with you being on the family island all the time, and I just wish you could see how...
That's right. Fred's dad is a super who had to go underground when they were outlawed. What do you think?
That was totally wicked!
Do you see any other links between the two franchises? Leave me a comment in the comment section down below. I'll be hanging out there for a while and we can chat. If you want to see my thought process for this video, please check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description of the video. Also make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and I hope you consider subscribing. Until next time, happy bubbles!